Constitution is a framework in which nations operate, societies operate, governments function. So Constitution is a framework for national life. Constitution is also an expectation of the country also. What India wants to become, how India wants to govern itself, how India wants to operate. What will be the relationship between different institutions in a country? What is the relationship between government and the people? So how did the structures of governance function? How should the systems of government function? Constitution is a framework for all this. So what are the unique features of Indian Constitution? Well, the first thing is, before I really explain to you various facets of the Constitution of India, you'll be surprised to know what is the life expectancy of an average constitution in the world. The Chicago Law School conducted a study. It studied the constitutions of several countries across the world from 1789 till recently. I think the study was done a few years ago. So the study revealed a strange aspect of constitutional life in the world. The study reveals that average life expectancy of a constitution in the world is just 19 years. Well, some constitutions survived beyond 19 years. Some constitutions died at its early formative phase itself. That's how you arrive at an average. So the average life expectancy is 19 years in the world of constitutions. And surprisingly, Indian Constitution still is a living constitution, is still a functional constitution, is still a surviving constitution, even after 70 years. So that itself is a great success. When India became independent, many have predicted that Indian democracy will not survive. Indian constitution will not survive. There are sufficient reasons for such an alarmist speculation. Though we don't like that speculation as an Indian. The rampant poverty, the very high levels of illiteracy, humongous diversity, and you have ethnic, geographical, linguistic diversity. You have hundreds and hundreds of languages, multiple religions, multiple traditions, practices, ethnicities that make this country very unique. So given this diversity, poverty, illiteracy, backwardness, many Western political commentators, many Western constitutional thinkers predicted, speculated that Indian democracy will not survive. Indian constitution may not survive for a longer period. And the famous German chancellor, Willy Brandt, once said, islands of democracy cannot survive in an ocean of dictatorship. Even today, we find several countries in our neighborhood struggling to sustain its democracies. Look at the experience in Pakistan. Democracy was an infantile disorder there. Though there is an elected government, we know that it is a proxy to the military. Military continues to play a very influential role in the political life of Pakistan. Myanmar, the military regime doesn't even recognize elections and electoral victories. Maldives continues to remain in crisis. Sri Lanka faced an unprecedented civil war. Nepal is experimenting with the constitutional democracy. So we in our neighborhood see the trend where democracy finds it hard to survive. On the contrary, despite several drawbacks, Indian democracy not only survived but flourishing. There are many great facets of Indian democracy. I'm not telling that there are no problems in India. There are several issues with Indian democracy, but still there are significant achievements too. The significant achievements make us feel proud as an Indian. You have a multi-party political system. You have a choice for the voters to choose between a very large menu of political parties and candidates. You are not forced to vote for a particular party or a particular candidate. So you have a free and fair elections, despite the influence of money power. There are several ills plaguing Indian democracy, which I will come back to up in my next lectures. So you have a multi-party political system, free and fair elections, reasonably free media, independent judiciary, military under civilian control. We don't have a situation where military intervenes in politics. Military is under civilian leadership. So you have the periodic elections, peaceful transfer of power. These are all the finest characteristics of Indian democracy, which are made possible because of the Constitution of India. So these are not ordinary successes when you compare with other countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. In many of the developing countries, we have seen how democracies slided into anarchy, slided into military dictatorship. So the first point which I wanted to make is, despite several drawbacks, despite several challenges, thanks to our constitution, Indian democracy has not only survived, it continues to flourish. And this itself is a great achievement. So at a time when the average life expectancy of a democratic constitution is 19 years, the fact that India survives as a democracy, progresses as a democracy, even after 70 years of implementation of the constitution, that speaks volumes about the efficacy of Indian constitution. So this is the first point which I want to make. Then, what makes Indian constitution so great? So the first thing is its inclusivity. The biggest challenge for a country like India is its diversity. It's a very difficult society to govern because you have so many languages, dialects. It's not like a country with a homogeneous population. We have heterogeneity in our population. There are several religions. Some of them have born in this country also. Some of them have influenced this country. Christianity came to India within 100 years of Jesus Christ. Islam came to India centuries ago. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism have taken birth in this country. Religions like Buddhism have spread to other parts of the world from India. So you have several religions. You have a very significant number of castes, subcastes, subsects, make this country's society very, very complex. You have ethnic categories also. Large tribal society exists in India even today. So this is called the diversity, several languages, several dialects. Dialect means it may be the same language, but people speak in different tone and tenor. Telugu spoken in Adilabad is not similar to the Telugu spoken in Srikakulam. Though it is Telugu, there is significant variation too. Certain words a Srikakulam Telugu person will find it extremely difficult to understand the Telugu language of Adilabad person. Why Adilabad? Even within the state of Andhra Pradesh, someone staying in Vijayawada cannot understand the Telugu spoken in Srikakulam. So I'm not telling you can't understand at all, but there is some element of variation. So this is called the linguistic diversity. So in a country with religious diversity, linguistic diversity, you have social heterogeneity, cultural differences, difference in traditions, food habits. So when there is such an humongous diversity, it is extremely difficult to govern. It is easy to govern a homogeneous group, but it is extremely difficult to govern a heterogeneous group. So that is the challenge of Indian democracy. So the Constitution of India enabled this country to remain united because it is an inclusive constitution. What do you mean by inclusive constitution? It binds people together. For example, the Constitution has many provisions to protect the language, tradition, and culture of linguistic minorities, religious minorities, ethnic minorities. And it also has the provisions to protect the language and culture of certain regions also. For example, you can't buy land in a tribal area unless you are from that area. I can't buy land in the tribal areas of Adilabad. I can't buy land in the tribal areas of Srikakulam. I can't buy the lands in Northeast. You can't go and buy a land in Nagaland because that is precisely because Constitution of India guarantees protection to the language and culture of these regions. So you have a special constitutional provision for that. And realizing that Indian society has a lot of inequalities, not just economic, but social and educational too. The Constitution of India provides for affirmative action in the form of reservations. So these are all features that make Constitution inclusive. You have a secular constitution. Secularism is a basic characteristic of Indian Constitution. I'll talk about secularism in my next lectures. Why? Because in a country which has population practicing multiple religions, you cannot have inequalities between different religions. So the state, the government, judiciary, these are all organs of state. State is irreligious in India. State has no religion. Citizens can practice religion. Citizens can profess religion. Citizens have a freedom of worship. But the state has no religion. So it's called state is irreligious. So that people believing in different religions can confidently coexist, can confidently live in this country. So these are all called inclusive features of Indian Constitution. So the point one is inclusivity. Second point is the flexibility. Indian Constitution is not a dogmatic document. You can amend the Constitution, but the process of amendment is not so easy to prevent frivolous amendments. So it's not so easy. It's not as easy as making a law. So there is the provisions, constitutional provisions have a lot of safeguards to avoid irrational or unreasonable amendments. But still the Constitution can be amended. But it can't be amended beyond a point. I'll tell you in my subsequent lectures, the famous Keshavananda Bharati verdict. The Supreme Court of India in this Keshavananda Bharati verdict said, Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, but it cannot amend the basic features of the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution is considered as the basic features of the Constitution, like liberty, equality, secularism, federalism, separation of powers between executive, legislature, and judiciary. All these are considered to be part of the basic structure of the Constitution. So Parliament also can't amend basic structure of the Constitution. Tomorrow, the government cannot bring a law that you can't speak out. The government cannot bring a law that all of you should practice only a particular religion. Tomorrow, the Parliament cannot make a law abolishing state governments. It's just not possible because these features form part of the basic structure of the Constitution, and even Parliament has no power to amend it. So this is called a flexibility in the Constitution. Indian Constitution is not rigid because the Constitution can't be rigid. Constitution can't be static also. It changes with the values changing in society. What was not so important 30 years ago is important today. For example, privacy. Privacy was not such a big issue 30, 40 years ago. Thanks to the technological development, thanks to the growing individuality, you want to keep your data private. So privacy has become so important. So the Supreme Court has to adjudicate, has to tell that right to privacy is part of right to life. So right to health was not debated 40 years ago so much. But now the Supreme Court has given a judgment that right to health includes right to life. So like that, as the society progresses, we face new challenges. We confront new challenges. So we require reorientation of the Constitution. Therefore, it can't be a rigid Constitution. We are witnessing what's happening in Afghanistan. It says we believe in the Islamic Constitution. Women should behave in such a manner because some religious preacher told 500 years ago. So that is the argument. So they say that it can't change because it was told 500 years ago. So what was right 500 years ago may not be right today. What was acceptable norms of behavior today might not be the acceptable norms of behavior 100 years ago. Because the world is changing. The technology is reshaping the way we live, the way we behave, the way we operate in society. So the Constitution of India, therefore, can't be rigid. But it can't be flexible beyond a point. You can't totally dump the Constitution into a dustbin. So there is, therefore, the concept of basic structure. So there is a flexibility, but it is not beyond a point. So that is the second interesting and significant feature of the Constitution. Third one is the liberty. The beauty of Indian Constitution is it upholds the liberties of citizens. What is so unique about democracy? What makes democracy unique when compared to other forms of government is the liberty of thought, liberty of action, liberty of belief, liberty of profession, liberty to speak. All these are embodied in fundamental rights. You can simply knock the doors of Supreme Court of India. If you think that your fundamental rights are abridged, you can simply get legal redress for the fundamental rights. Your freedom to speak, your freedom to form an association, your freedom to form, freedom to protest, your freedom to worship. You have several freedoms. So it's called liberty. So the liberty in several forms make this constitution a truly democratic constitution. There are attempts in the history to trample upon this liberty, but still liberty prevails. So that is the third feature. Fourth aspect are the checks and balances. The constitution is so designed to avoid any concentration of power in the hands of anyone. You have checks and balances. So the political power is distributed. It's not just with the central government. In fact, the Tamil Nadu government had taken a decision not to use the word central government itself, because the Constitution of India is against the centralization. So it's a big issue. Tamil Nadu government has given orders preventing or avoiding use of word center in all its correspondence with the government of India. It only says it should use the word union instead of center. Well, there is a video in my YouTube channel, Prof K Nageshwar English, on why Tamil Nadu government wants to avoid the use of word center, because that's the true spirit of the constitution. I support the Tamil Nadu government's move. So because the constitution doesn't allow concentration of power in the hands of central government, in the words of government of India. So you have government of India, your state governments, your local bodies. So you have from a ward member to the prime minister, the power is distributed. So that is called federalism. You have parliament makes laws, assembly makes laws, governments implement those laws, and you have the court which can review those laws. If the parliament makes law, Supreme Court can simply strike it down if it is unconstitutional. So this is called the power of judicial review. So you have checks and balances embedded in the Constitution of India. Government spends money on behalf of the people, but you have institutions like Comptroller and Auditor General which scrutinizes the public expenditure. Government has power to spend, but it can't spend as per its whims and fancies. You have the CAG auditing the public expenditure. You have courts evaluating whether the acts of government, whether the laws passed by the legislature are in tune with the Constitution of India. These are called checks and balances. We have independent constitutional bodies like Election Commission of India. So this is aimed at ensuring that there are checks and balances in the Constitution of India. Well, I spoke about inclusivity in the Constitution. I spoke about the flexibility and what are the limits of flexibility in the Constitution of India. Third, I also talked about the judicial review. Also spoke about another important character called the checks and balances in the Indian Constitution. And also spoke about the liberty, which is the central feature of Indian Constitution.